All right, we are on Fan4Racing Radio for our Hot Topic Sound Off for tonight. And I'm Fan4Racing Sharon, and joining me is Jay Huseman. Welcome to the show, Jay.
Thank you, Sharon. I guess it doesn't show it up there, but for Hot Topics, I'll go by the big mouth of the Mid-South. I know some fans know me as that, especially around Jackson Motor Speedway and tracks around Mississippi and Tennessee. But when it comes to Hot Topics, I know I got a big mouth because I got an opinion.
Well, this is the place for that, I guess. Again, we do like to keep it friendly. We do keep this available for kids, so we want to be kid friendly as we express our thoughts and share our thoughts. We want to focus on not the person, but the situation that we discuss. So just kind of keep that in mind as we discuss here. So Jay, where do you want to start off? I know I sent some topics. I know you've got some hot topics on your list. So why don't you go ahead and start us off for tonight?
Well, I think to start with, we got to go with most recent. That was from the Atlanta Cup Series race, and that is a person. I know you said not to talk about the person, but it does involve the person, and that is rookie Carson Hocevar. A lot of feelings that he was a little aggressive, called some names over private radios throughout the race, and they talked about that. But and he's got a reputation. We know that through the Truck Series. So what are your thoughts on how he raced yesterday at Atlanta?
Well, Jay, I think this is a learning curve for Carson Hocevar. We've seen a lot of drivers go through this learning curve. I know after the race, two different drivers kind of pulled him aside. I know Ryan Blaney was one of them. The other driver, I can't think of who it was.
Ross Chastain.
Chastain was the other driver that kind of pulled him aside. And I have to give some kudos to both Ross Chastain and Ryan Blaney. It wasn't heated. It was a conversation just saying you need to kind of slow down a little bit and think about what you're doing. Choose your moments to make your moves. And be smart about it. And, you know, that's one of the things that we know about some of the younger drivers that come into this sport. They don't always have the experience to give it that kind of thought process before they make their move. And we've seen a lot of drivers go through that learning curve of learning how to know when's the right time to make those kind of moves. Probably early in the race, it isn't a good idea. I know sometimes when they're racing for the stage win or at the end of the race, that's when you are a little more aggressive, I think. But it's not necessary to be that aggressive so early in the race. And I think that's the message that Ryan Blaney and some of those guys, Ross Chastain, were trying to make with Carson Hocevar. I think he took it to heart. He did say in a post that he knows he's got to give more thought to some of the moves that he makes. So he listened, and I think he heard what they had to say. The proof is in the pudding with what he does the next time they're on a super speedway or at some of the upcoming races. They're going to be on a road course next. So we'll see what happens moving forward.
Well, I thought it was ironic, first off, that Ross Chastain was one of them that came to talk to him because last year or year before, year and a half or so, exactly, it was him that people were talking about in this same manner. But you're right. Not just kudos to Ryan Blaney and Ross Chastain for coming and talk to him as a veteran. You know, that's what they should be doing. But I also thought Carson Hocevar handled himself well. Like you said, he did listen, and I know specifically they said with Ross Chastain, they shook hands when it was over. There was clearly some frustration on both sides, but I didn't see it as a big blow up. Obviously, no punches swung or anything. But Hocevar also did still comment, and he worded it a little different, but he's not there to make friends. I don't remember how he said it, of something to the effect of, we're not going to play together on the playground, not form a boy band or something. He's there to win. And he did admit, though, that he had some things to clean up. I know the bump with Blaney was a little offset and caused that wreck. which Blaney darn near saved anyway. But he also said, he was up front running for a win, and that was a first for him on the Cup Series side. So I understand that. And like you said, it is a learning curve. And before I turn it back over to you, I just want to go through a list of some names. Dale Earnhardt, and he was that way all the way through. Darrell Waltrip, Kyle Busch, Ross Chastain, Joey Logano, Tony Stewart. All of these guys kind of had that reputation or start to their careers, so I think we'll see them mature. And Ty Gibbs, another one we've seen here recently. So I don't think he's any different than most other rookies. When you talk about a list of drivers that don't have that issue, you can't count very many. You're talking Mark Martin, Martin Truex Jr., Jeff Burton, I'd put on that list, but that one's a lot shorter.
Yeah, it's just a coming of age kind of thing that happens within NASCAR. And I think it especially happens in I was going to say, I think it especially happens in the Cup Series, but I've seen it happen in the Truck Series as well, and the Xfinity Series. But I think it's probably most talked about in the Cup Series, where drivers come in new and they kind of buck heads a little bit with the veterans. And I've had some people say, it could be that, the veterans are a little bit jealous. They know he has the talent, and they kind of want to keep him in check, if you will. But I really think that in the case of both Ross Chastain and Ryan Blaney, I really like the way they handled it. It wasn't a rage. It wasn't an emotional conversation. It was a very reasoned out conversation between two drivers, just saying, I'm going to give you my side of this. And we've all been there, and you're not alone. We want to support you. We think you've got the talent, but you need to slow down a little bit and think about what you're doing and be smart.
I think from what I heard, Ryan Blaney's was actually calm down, not necessarily slow down, because you're not going to tell somebody to slow down, but it was calm down. And they did. I saw him discussing the bump, and that's where I said I think Carson Hocevar understood there. He made a mistake, misjudged it, whatever it be. I know they said it could have been that Blaney cut, zigzagged, and whatever. But I didn't see that as much, and I think they realized that. Yeah, I think they realized, the broadcasters realized that when they went back to replay that. That really was just a offset bump in a bad spot in that tri-oval. And there too, experience will bring that about, of knowing what areas of a track, each individual track, you can bump and where you can't. You mentioned it being more of a focus on the Cup Series. As a whole, most of the time, these young drivers have come through one of the other two series, the Truck Series or the Xfinity. So by the time you get to the Cup Series, you're expected to be. You think about it, they no longer put that rookie stripe on it, because they said if you've gotten to the Cup Series, you've got the talent and whatever to be there. You don't need to be identified as that rookie. This was from NASCAR side. So I think there's a little bit that goes with that as well, as far as how you conduct yourself, aggressive on the track, off the track, whatever.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think that in some cases, we're seeing people move up much more quickly. Carson Hocevar did a few Xfinity Series races. He raced primarily in the Truck Series and then moved up into the Cup Series. So I think that contributes to this as well. The fact that these guys are kind of skipping over the Xfinity Series a little bit. And I'll give you an example. We talked about Riley Herbst earlier when I was on with Sal Segala when we were doing the review for the Cup Series. And we talked about how it probably benefited Riley Herbst to stay in the Xfinity Series another year before coming into the Cup Series. And I would like to see more drivers do that, because I think it gives them some of that learning curve experience before they hit the Cup Series. And I think Carson Hocevar didn't really get that step in his progression, if you will.
Yeah, and that's true. There's always that valid to that. I know so many things drive that. We've talked about sponsors or the timing. Harrison Burton, another one that kind of got put into that. Daniel Suarez, Joey Logano, back when he first came up, and they all had to make adjustments in their career and find the right place. I think all of them are in good places now, but they went through that. Like you said, Carson Hocevar is not the first, probably won't be the last. So we'll see how it pans out. But overall, I like him. Like I said, he definitely one of those of you'd put on the side of aggressive. I'm not going to try and argue that by any means. But I kind of like that driver that has that attitude of I'm here to win, not make friends. That's their job. That's what they get paid for. Now,
Yes.
again, and Sharon, you and I disagree on the bump and run versus the dump and run. I'm not saying go out there and run over everybody, with no thought whatsoever, but being aggressive and occasionally, I have to throw out Ricky Stenhouse, being a Mississippi driver. Ricky Stenhouse is another one. He's gone through some stages of that. Brad Keselowski. Like I said, that list of ones that have had that label at one point in their career is so long.
Yeah, and a couple more points I want to make, and then we'll move on to another topic. I think about Justin Allgaier too. He went up to the Cup Series, struggled in the Cup Series, came back to the Xfinity Series, became a champion. Now he's back in the Cup Series with Junior Motorsports at Daytona, and look how well he did. It just shows that sometimes that progression, taking time to progress through the levels, I think can help make you a better driver over time. Is it for everybody? Maybe not. Everybody's got their own progression level. And I'm not talking about taking away the spirit that Carson has. I think everybody agrees that he's got a good spirit. He's maybe a little overly aggressive at this stage of his progression, and he just needs to tone it back a little bit. And I don't expect that this is going to be the last time that he encounters this. I think about Ross Chastain. He had several races where that happened when he was going through this. And I expect that the same thing's going to happen with Carson Hocevar. He's going to have several other times before he finally, settles in and that lesson is learned and he moves forward. Sometimes it's better to slow down to go faster, if that makes any sense at all. But just to slow down your thinking process, not your car necessarily.
Right.
And think about things before you do them. And sometimes if you can do that, you're going to get a better result than just kind of pushing your way around to get up front. And I think it comes back down to respect for your fellow competitors as well. And that's what I look for in drivers. I can get out there on the track, just to kind of articulate a little bit of our differences here. I can get out there on the track and bumper car my way to the front by knocking everybody else out of the way. And I'm not the best driver. I think if you really want to see a driver's skill, part of that skill is your mental process as well. And I think if you can use the mental capability along with the actual physical skills that you have, show respect to your fellow drivers, you're going to get a lot more out of that in the long run than if you're making enemies on the track as you're kind of growing your capabilities mentally and physically on the track. So I think respect is the big word here, and respecting your fellow competitors goes a long way.
Well, and there I certainly Carson, I feel, did listening to the drivers and shaking hands with them afterwards, of still saying, hey, I'm here to win, but admitting, like I said, that he's got some things to clean up, and we'll see how it goes throughout the season. The one thing I really that he acknowledged is he said, hey, this is the first time I've got to run up front and have a shot at a win like that. I mean, that was honest. You got to give him credit for that, of saying, hey, maybe I did get a little overexcited. I was in a position I hadn't been in before. So we'll see how that goes. I want to say real quick, I've been trying to watch the chat room here, that this is our first time here on a live YouTube. I'm going based off of knowledge of doing this with other people. If you're watching, you have to comment for us in order to see that you're on watching us. And please, by all means, be respectful. We've been talking about respect, but chime in with your comments and let us know if you got a hot topic you want to have discussed or contribute to the one we are discussing.
Yeah, right now, people don't know that we're here, Jay, so they don't know that this is a live stream. The chat is to the right. If you click on the comment section, a chat box will open up on the right and you'll be able to comment in there. But we welcome everybody to participate, give your thoughts. And we're looking for people that might want to join us on Fan4Racing Hot Topics. It's not going to happen immediately. We want to make sure you've got the right temperament and everything. But the chat feature and doing these live streams right now are going to help us to identify folks that might be able to join us. So we really encourage you to participate in our live streaming chat room. Okay, so Jay, where are we going to go to from here? I think we've kind of talked that one out.
All right. Well, this one could have a negative tone, and again, we don't have any option other than to talk about it. A big topic throughout the day on Sirius XM, starting as soon as the race was over, actually, was the inconsistency of caution flags when it comes to the end of these races. Super speedways, obviously tough, but we saw a couple at Daytona, a couple here at Atlanta. Didn't seem like they were consistent. I've heard both sides. NASCAR saying that not everyone's the same, and they did admit fault in one where they should have thrown it and they didn't, and then tried to overcorrect. But from my understanding, prior to Sunday's Cup Series race, they said, hey, what happened last night, if it happens that way again, we are going to throw the caution, and they did. So, the drivers were briefed on that prior to the drivers' meeting.
Yes, and I know there's been a lot of discussion about the inconsistency. And as you mentioned, I'm so proud of NASCAR for coming out and saying, because, a lot of times we hear from folks that NASCAR never admits that they make a mistake. Well, I dispute that because they just did. They admitted that they made a mistake, and they said we went back. They go back on Mondays and they review every single race, and they look at things that they can improve upon and do better in future races. Well, when they sat down on Monday after the Daytona race, they said, yes, we probably were a little hasty there, and we will look at that and do it differently moving forward. Same thing with the Atlanta race. They looked at it and said, okay, we need to find that happy medium in between. And so I really applaud NASCAR for doing a review like that every single week after every single race, to sit down and do those reviews and look at what they can do better. And so are they inconsistent sometimes? Yeah, maybe so. But they're not afraid to say, yeah, we probably could have done that differently, and look at it and say, we're going to do it different from here on out. We'll watch it throughout the season, but just trust that NASCAR is doing that analysis of themselves and looking at what they can do better.
And being in the booth at the local dirt track, primarily Jackson Motor Speedway, that's what you call a cheap plug. I can tell you, being a race director is no easy job, first off. And I can only imagine at the NASCAR level, they were talking about it on Sirius XM. In a headset, you probably got 4 voices you're listening to, and then you got the people that are around you in the booth. Safety is a primary concern, okay? And that's a lot of times if cars turn directly into the wall or T-boned and hitting the driver's side, that's going to be an automatic, immediate caution. From that, they kind of want to try and watch and see if anybody is going to need immediate safety response. If the car is just spinning around sideways or whatever and doesn't hit anything, may even be able to get going again. They want to try and give the fans what they want. What everybody wants is that green flag finish to the checkered, finish under green and have them race it out. And you can't set. I know throughout the day there was a lot of suggestions. Well, they should have a standard. Okay, what's your standard? If there's 5 cars involved, well, you got to try and count. How many cars is that? 1, 2, 3, 4. You can't have that. And not every accident incident is the same. So try to understand and appreciate their side of it from that race director and in the booth. And let me tell you, I don't know that you can unless you experience it. And my experience of it is very limited to what I think it is at the NASCAR level.
Yes, and let me tell you something. One thing I've learned over the years that I've watched NASCAR is that if you think it will never happen, think again, because we've had cars run into the what was it, the jet dryer. I mean, we've had all kinds of crazy things happen.
That was a one-time thing. You're right. I don't know that I would have ever thought that could possibly happen, but you're right. We saw that happen.
And they put safer barriers up at these tracks where they think is the most likely places for drivers to hit. And guess what? The drivers found other areas that weren't protected by a safety barrier that should have been covered and weren't. So you can't, unless you have a crystal ball, you can't always predict exactly what's going to happen in every single situation, because just because it hasn't happened before doesn't mean it's not going to happen at some point. And it's happened at NASCAR in the most unlikely of circumstances. Nobody would have ever thought that a car could run into one of those jet dryers on the racetrack during a caution, and yet that's exactly what happened. So you've got to, it's an ever-changing process with NASCAR because of that. And they are continually looking and analyzing and changing and evolving as a sport. It never is going to end. There isn't an end point for NASCAR because it is a constant, ever-changing process. So just when you think you've come up with a solution and they put that solution in place, something else happens that wasn't expected, and another new process has to be put into place. So keep that in mind, that it is an ever-evolving thing here at NASCAR.
Well, and as fans called in and expressed their displeasure with NASCAR, my frustration actually comes towards some of these fans. They want the super speedway side-by-side racing, but that's what creates this type of situation. Talk about the overtime, as well as that aggressiveness. They want to see that. When it comes to whether or not they should throw the caution and the kind of leaned into the discussion of overtime and multiple overtimes, some of this has to go back to the drivers too, of don't crash, don't wreck. I mean, yeah, we all know it. You're going for the win, but at what cost? And especially some of these are, as they pointed out, I know throughout the preview or the review shows, we were talking about every point matters, but really wrecking the field for 14th to 15th spot of one spot, is that worth it? And there again, I feel for the drivers. They're having to make these decisions in that same split second timing that NASCAR has to look at it and try and make their decision on how it happened and what they need to do. So give them give them a break a little bit. I do understand where the feeling of that inconsistency is, but we don't always have the same full picture either. They talked about that of if there's debris on the track, how many drivers are going to drive through that debris is one of the factors. So even though you may not have a car in the wall, like I said, a car turned head on into the wall, but if they've slammed into each other and spinning, there may be debris that then the rest of the field is going to come through and may be a bigger safety issue. So you just never know. And again, you want to err on the side of safety. I think it was AJ Allmendinger that talked about that after Daytona. He would never get on NASCAR for making a call on the benefit side of safety. And I don't want to be grim about it, but if you're talking about waiting 3 to 5 seconds, for them to get all the way to the start finish line, if a driver is having a problem and there is an issue, 3 to 5 seconds can mean a life. And that's what the position NASCAR's in is, do we need to get somebody out to these cars? Do it now.
That is an excellent point, Jay. And, if I was a NASCAR driver, I would want them to be looking out for my safety. So I think it is important for fans to remember that. Now, I say that, but I want to encourage fans. It's okay to express what your concerns are. That's okay for you to do that, because NASCAR does need your feedback. So I'm not going to discourage you from giving feedback because I think it is important for NASCAR to hear that feedback and to know the things that they need to be looking for when they do their analysis of the day after, and they're looking at what they need to do differently. But once you've given it, give them the chance to look at it and decide what they need to do next. So I'm not going to discourage fans from participating, because I think that's important too, Jay.
It is. And there again, and I understand that the world we live in social media, we have this discussion a lot. There's an appropriate way to do it. We talked about it with the drivers of how you approach somebody and have a discussion with them versus coming at them, yelling and screaming and fists a flying. We can do the same thing with how we disagree with something, whether it be how they're running the sport or the actions they're taking, a driver, whatever it be. Sharon and I disagree on certain topics, but you can do so respectfully, and that's all we ask.
Absolutely. And I am so happy that we had drivers that were really role modeling positive behavior in working things out with one another after the race at Atlanta with Ryan Blaney and Ross Chastain. They gave a really good examples of how to do that with the driver, and Carson, accepted it. I think there was a lot of respect there, and he accepted it. And, getting back to our previous conversation, it kind of ties into this as well.
Yeah, that was funny, and I don't remember. I think it was a caller on Dave Moody's show today, Sirius XM, talking about being the race director and what they have to do. And this guy was a race director. He was a prior racer, was now a race director. So he was trying to explain from that position what you're in and give benefit of the doubt. And he said he didn't mind being a race director. He said he didn't want to be in Elton Sawyer's position, the one that had to answer every week as to why they made the decisions they did. And I was like, that's probably a true statement too. Don't envy that position, where Elton Sawyer is the one that is the face of NASCAR when it comes to answering those questions each and every week on Sirius XM.
Yes, I agree. It's a better position to be in. But I think we've said just about everything we can say here too, Jay. I don't think there's anything more there, unless you have something, or move on to our next topic.
Nope, and you've let me have the first two, so why don't you tell me what you got on your mind as far as hot topics?
Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't we? I'm looking at a note here that I put down. I saw that the Clash is likely going to be back at Bowman Gray Stadium. Any quick thoughts on that?
I don't know about quick. No, that one is trust in NASCAR. I think they're making the right decision. I know we talked about this. I don't remember if it was on any of our shows, but we certainly did when we talked offline. I know there's other options and possibilities out there, but anytime you try something new, I think that 3-year window is a sweet spot. The first one was really good. Even if it's not so good, give it time to develop. A 3-year window. We've compared it to the LA Coliseum as far as the Clash, the dirt race on Bristol. We're in the 3rd year of the Chicago street race. If it's lived it or run its course at that point, then move on. Now, I understand there may be certain times where, the talk was of possibly Brazil. Well, maybe that window is only open next year, so they would have to do it that way. But I'm excited to hear that it's at least leaning towards, is what I heard of that. The probability is very high that it does come back to Bowman Gray. And I thought it was a good race. I know some fans, having watched I can't think of the something mayhem show that they had on about Bowman Gray. That's your local Saturday night, I'd say dirt track, but I know it's an asphalt track. But that type of show, NASCAR is not going to tolerate that. They're not going to say, hey, you can't touch, but they're also not going to say, hey, it's a free for all, do whatever you want. And I thought that we got a good show of that. There were some bent fenders and expressed feelings in all that, some hard racing for an exhibition show, which is what we expected, or I did anyway. I don't want to see the over the top. If I want to see that, I'll watch the WWE, which I do.
Well, I'll tell you, I like the 3-year window as well. I think it gives chance to, again, review what happened and do an analysis if they can see things that they can improve upon and bring it back in the second year and be even better, and the third year be even better. And then, by the third year, maybe it's kind of lost its appeal and it's time then to move on in the fourth year to a new venue. I like that. And it gives them a chance to get it right before they move on. And I thought the race at Bowman Gray this year was done pretty well. We don't always get a chance to see the heat races on a short track. And I like the idea that there are heat races to kind of dwindle down the field so that a 23-car field is what they had for the feature race on Sunday, and through, what was it, 3 or 4 heat races, and then the last chance qualifier, the LCQ. I think it makes it exciting, and it engages fans for all those heat races and the LCQ and for the main race, which is what happens at local short track races all across the country. And even if you see that on a weekly basis across the country, it's kind of neat to see that happen at NASCAR's top level. I think it makes a connection with the grassroots of racing, and I like that.
You hit on a key word there that I want to follow up on, the grassroots. But if you were looking for that mayhem, you saw it in the proper term is the LCQ, last chance qualifier. A lot of tracks call it the hooligan race, and even at the NASCAR level, at the Cup Series, it kind of turned into that. It was certainly a wild one. So you kind of got that out of that race, that one race, because that is where it's all on the line. So I know when we get to the All-Star race, I always say I like to watch the Open, because that's your one chance. You're not in it yet. That's your one last chance. So I always think the Open is an extremely intense and very active race. But I'm talking about, even if you're doing the 3-year window for it, if we stay at Bowman Gray or for at least 2 years or 3 years, the investment they made there, again, you want to get your return out of it, but then also and I think it was Kevin Harvick talked about this, he was against taking it to Brazil, not that he's against NASCAR expanding to an international level, but take it to some of your local tracks and invest in them and help them survive. Kevin Harvick, Kern Raceway in California is one of them, and that is a possibility. But he's also named some others that he would like to see it go to that could benefit from NASCAR coming in for 1 to 3 years or however many they do it, invest in the track, build it up, and then they'll be able to sustain it. And especially if it's on a rotating basis. So I kind of like that idea. So again, as much as I liked it at Bowman Gray, if they move on and take it somewhere else, I'm not going to have a problem with that. And I mentioned this when they did the Bristol dirt race. I'm a dirt track guy. I thought it was great. They experimented with it. I personally thought they should have gone to either Knoxville or Eldora of a real dirt track. But, I understand from the business side, they own Bristol and they made it work. Again, outside the box thinking, they made it work. And I went up there because they did, again, to get their money out of it, they had the dirt on Bristol for, I think, a month and a half. And they had World of Outlaws, sprint cars. Some buddies of mine went up there and ran their street stocks. I went up there for the late model show that Kyle Larson was in. So even after the 3 years, though, and some people liked it, some didn't, it got better over the 2 to 3 years that they worked it. When they moved on, I wasn't heartbroken because they had done it for 3 years, and I appreciated that. So I was okay with that.
Yes, and I think about the Chicago street race, how skeptical I was when they talked about doing a street race on the streets of Chicago. And I was one of the skeptics. I didn't think it was going to work out so well. I didn't go the first year. I remember one of our Fan4Racing crew went, Brian Everly. He said he loved it. I went last year, the second year, and absolutely loved it. I thought they did a fantastic job with it. So I think that's just another example of trust NASCAR. If it doesn't sound like it's going to work, give them a chance to show what they can make happen, because they certainly did it with that Chicago street race. And now we're coming up on the third year. So this will be the last year of the Chicago street race. I'd really encourage everybody, if you didn't think it was going to work, check it out, because it definitely worked. I felt safe. I know, Jay, you've talked about being at road course races where you can walk around and see cars. I would suggest everybody go over to the bridge and watch these guys race over the Columbus Street Bridge, over that, I think it's Columbus Street. I can't remember now, but there's a bridge coming around to the fourth or the last turn to come across the finish line. And wow, to watch those cars race over that was pretty fantastic. And you can move around the track and go to different places and watch them. And I think they just did a fantastic job. We also sat right at the start finish line in the stands over there and watched the race. And it was fantastic. They've got the big screens there to see too, different parts of the racetrack. So just trust NASCAR is all I'm going to say. They might not get it right to begin with, but give them the feedback, be respectful, and they will listen and they will make it better. So that's just another example.
And that was one of, you're right, I went to Road America when I was talking about going to a road course and getting to walk around and see it from different areas. I know you talked about your experience at Chicago. I can't even imagine it being from within the city. So I think you get kind of the best of both worlds. For me, the one that I was skeptic on was the Roval at Charlotte Motor Speedway, and then they also did it in Indianapolis. Now, my issue there, just like I was with the dirt track, of go to an actual. You have other road courses such as Road Atlanta, and I can't think of the one in Virginia that they used to test at.
VIR.
Yeah, there we go.
Virginia International Raceway.
That was where I didn't understand why they wouldn't go to an actual. But again, I understand Charlotte Motor Speedway, owned by SMI, isn't going to just give up a date. With building the road course within the track, I was a little concerned about that. And that has become, I think, is going to stay for a long time as far as the Charlotte one. I know Indianapolis, yeah, that one's a little different because you go back to running the Brickyard 400 on the oval track. A little bit different there. But I've come to expect the Roval to be one of the best races in the playoffs, honestly, So that was one I was with you. I was like, I don't know if that's going to work, and I questioned it and, see what happens. First year, there were some issues, both with the track and the turtles and the barriers, but also with the drivers. How deep can we drive into turn one? Do we follow the guy in front of us? They learned and, realized that wasn't the best idea to follow the guy in front of you into the wall, but it worked out. And like I said, that's one of the best races, I think, of the year in the playoffs generally.
Okay. I'm going to go to my list here and see if I can find another hot topic. Okay, let me bring up this one. This was one that came up last week, actually. Dale Jr. was talking about there's some discussion around the practice sessions. They had practice sessions at Daytona. They did not have practice sessions at Atlanta. But what he said is open up the track for practice. I know it's a crazy idea, and I'm paraphrasing here, but would you believe they used this method for decades with no real issues or complaints? So C. Bell even said that he didn't think practice was even necessary. That was his perspective of it. Other drivers, I think about Kyle Busch, especially when the Gen 6 car came out, he wanted those practices so that he could kind of acclimate themselves to that Gen 6 car. But what happened over time is the crew chiefs realized they've got to have a car that's ready coming off the truck. But again, with the Gen 6 car, it was an evolution. It was a process. It was something that they kind of had to take their time with.
This one of, as a race fan, if practice is on and they have it and it's on TV, or I'm at the track and they have it, I'm going to be there. I like racing. From the business side, though, that's where the question comes in. And does it add value to the product? And I understand what Dale Jr. is saying of, give them the option. If they want to do it, they do. But that's where you get into the who can outspend who. Some of these teams barely have enough money to get their car and their tires just to run an entire race. So now you're saying, okay, practice time. Well, they're probably the ones that need the practice time more so than any of the top teams that are going to have top tier equipment coming off the truck. So I don't know that I agree with that philosophy. What I think happened during COVID when they started this, did we see any worse racing though when we didn't get an hour or hour and a half or 3 hours of practice? I don't think we did. So NASCAR said, okay, it's going to save teams money and it'll keep the teams from the rich getting richer, the fast getting faster in this case. Yeah, I mean, Kyle Busch is good. If the car isn't quite right, he can still run it to a top 5. You give him an hour of practice, and yeah, he's going to put it on point. So I kind of like not having the practice. As much as I like to watch it and I'm involved in it if it's there, I kind of like not having the practice.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you, Jay. I wasn't a fan of the practices anyway. What were you really watching? There was the commentary that was going on. I would listen to some of that, but it didn't really tell us everything because different people had different things that were on their agenda for those practice sessions. So it really came down to, I could get as much from the practice session by looking at the final results of the practice session as I could spending an hour watching it. So I really feel that, and I think that with Dale Jr. talking about the practice sessions and C. Bell's comments, I think it's hard to think of Dale Jr. being old school or Kyle Busch being old school, but they were around during the days when they did those practice sessions, and they became accustomed to it and built their weekend around it, if you will. So C. Bell came in during the time when COVID was around, and they eliminated the practice sessions for good reasons. And so he became accustomed to not having those practice sessions. And that's why I think he feels, what's the point? Excuse me. And so they are doing those, they're going out there and bringing a truck or a car off the truck that's ready to race. And they're making their adjustments in the early part of the race to be there at the end. And I think we see that with Christopher Bell. I see where Dale Jr. is coming from for those people who feel that they need a practice. I guess you could open up the track and they could come out at their convenience and practice on the track. And it wouldn't be necessarily something that we watch or keep an eye on or whatever. But I think you make a valid point, Jay, when you say that it kind of evens out the playing field instead of the best getting better and the wannabes, not getting a chance. maybe you close it for the best and let the others practice. I don't know. I think you're right. It evens the playing field, and you just leave it as it is. They do practice sessions when NASCAR feels it's needed, and at a track like Daytona, when you have people like Helio Castroneves, who's never raced on that track in a stock car before, there needed to be a practice session. So again, we got to trust NASCAR is making the right decisions for the right tracks. And I think the next gen car does give them the opportunity to level the playing field. And we've shown that it has worked with all the different race winners that we have throughout the season. Excuse me, I got the hiccups for some reason. So we just have to kind of stay on that path and keep the playing field level. And the crew chiefs just have to work at, developing those cars in the early parts of the race and get better at that.
Whoops, sorry, I pulled my headphone out. This weekend is a prime example of that, of NASCAR saying we're going to have practice because of COTA, Circuit of Americas. They changed the track layout. I think they cut approximately a mile off of it. So even though they've been to COTA multiple times, it's a track layout that's a little bit different. So there are going to be times throughout the year where you're going to see practice for various reasons. Now, if I were in charge of NASCAR, which I never will be and don't necessarily want to be, but you mentioned Helio Castroneves. I think if anything, there should be a rookie test session or drivers with X amount of experience or less, whether it be years in at NASCAR's top level or X number of races at that particular track, something like that. That those that maybe do need that, we've talked about that, because even if you run the Xfinity series, there's certain tracks that they just don't run at. That's my only real call for practice would, like I said, of what we used to see from rookies winning races and being more of a contender in their first year. Now it takes about 3 years or 100 races is what they say before they really come into their own. I think that's part of it is they don't get that practice time prior to each race.
Yeah, I think at the super speedways like Daytona, when you've got a number of people racing there for the first time, and I think too at a drafting track like Daytona, if you've got new people in there, they need to learn how to do the drafting, and you've got to have a large number of cars on the track in order to practice that. Or a larger number of cars on the track than a rookie class would provide. So I can see them opening it up to everybody at those kind of tracks as well. But you bring up some good examples there, Jay. And I think that we've made our point.
Well, I know I got one more, and I don't know if you had heard this or not, Sharon. I think I put it on the list I sent to you, but there is some discussion of Kansas Speedway is a track that is looking at needing to be repaved, and they're talking about repaving and reconfiguring like Atlanta, which would bring about another semi-super speedway if they're able to duplicate what Atlanta has. And we've seen the impact it has on Atlanta. What are your thoughts on, though, another track becoming a super speedway, in this case, Kansas Speedway?
Well, with the next gen car, with the Gen 6, is it Gen 6 or 7?
I think it's 7. Yeah, 7. I think it's 7.
Yeah, with the Gen 7 car, I really think that we've got to be careful. People thought we had way too many 1.5 mile tracks for a long time. They thought the racing wasn't good on the 1.5 mile tracks. And so NASCAR started doing all of these experiments with the Chicago street race, with the Roval, with the dirt on Bristol, and so forth. Well, now with the next gen car, the 1.5 mile track racing, the intermediate track racing has improved. And we've had some very exciting races on those tracks. So I just worry about overdoing it with the super speedway type racing. Atlanta gives us good racing. Michigan is a fast track. It's similar, not the same, but similar to Atlanta in that it's not a huge track, but it's a fast track. And so now you're talking about doing it at Kansas. I would say if they do it at Kansas, don't do any more. That would have to be it for me. I just am throwing up the yellow flag, if you will, to say let's not overdo it with these super fast races on 1.5 mile tracks.
Well, you used a couple of different examples, but the theme behind it was the same of when you have something good, more must be better, right? And that's not the case. And I go back to having night races, when Charlotte Motor Speedway lit the track up for the Winston for the All-Star race and then ran race under the lights. Well, then all of a sudden everybody was doing it, and all of a sudden we had all night races, and then fans weren't happy. That's what made it unique. When you talk about that, the Truck Series ran at Eldora on dirt. Everybody's like, oh, Cup's got to do it. Well, that was a unique thing for the Truck Series. So, and I don't know if that's why NASCAR opted to not bring them to that track and run it on real dirt versus on Bristol of a made track. I don't know. But it might have played into it. And there is something to be said for that. I just think about road courses. As all the Cup drivers became more skilled at road racing, started adding. We used to have two, Sonoma and Watkins Glen, and that was it. Well, then they started adding some, and drivers got better. And with the way the championship was determined, you couldn't use it as a throwaway race anymore, which some drivers used to. So they were like, okay, well, now all of a sudden we have 7, 8, 9 road courses. That's too much. So you got to be careful of that. I personally don't even think, I hate to say it, but, Atlanta did something unique and they made it work. Don't try and copy them. Come with your own. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. And let me throw this out to you, Jay, because a lot of people were unhappy with the racing at Texas Motor Speedway. As we're sitting here talking about this, I'm wondering, why don't they do that at Texas Motor Speedway instead of Kansas, where we get good racing?
And I'm one of those, and I know that's funny that you bring it up of, I'm not going to say it's great racing at Texas. I am not as negative about it or as hard on it, but I understand that some people do feel that one's a lot worse. So I would have to agree. But then again, Sharon, we thought the same about Chicagoland, and that's a track they took away completely. So I don't know. Texas is one of those I certainly wouldn't disagree that maybe needs to figure something out to make the racing better. I know we've kind of been, we're talking 3 years now with this next gen car, Gen 7. It doesn't seem to have gotten a whole lot better as far as when it comes to Texas. So, yeah, they may be one that does need to try something. And I understand if Kansas is looking to improve theirs. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying of trying to copy what worked in another track, especially since you don't know that it's going to reproduce those same results. That's a big risk you're taking. It did work at Atlanta, and we've gotten some great things. But there again, I look at it of just because it worked one time doesn't mean it's going to work every time. And I think back to last year, we had that 3-wide finish. I don't care what happens, you're not going to get that at every race at Atlanta now. And it seems to me like fans expect that. Maybe could have happened if we hadn't had the caution the other night, because we saw it in the Truck Series as well. But no matter what, you can't expect that every week, every race.
And that's true. Fans are so used to the video games where, you can create your own action and everything's fast paced, and you just reset the button and start all over again. And NASCAR racing is not like that. It's not always going to be, that fast pace kind of thing. I enjoyed the racing at Chicagoland Speedway. I'll hold out hope. We would go to Chicagoland and they'd have the ARCA race, the truck race, the Xfinity, and the Cup race. And all 4 races were really exciting races and fun to watch. I was just so disappointed when they decided to close it down. I still hold out hope that when they're done with the street races that they'll come back to Chicago Speedway. Who knows? But I will be a diehard, I guess, on that, but like a Cubs fan. But let me get back to racing here. I agree with you that you know, I don't know why they chose Kansas. Kansas is ready for a repave, maybe. I know from a driver's point of view, they never want the repaves because they like the worn out tracks to race on. But again, NASCAR's looking for driver safety, and so they want to do the repaves and make it safer to race on. But I think if I were choosing between Kansas and Texas, I would probably choose Texas over Kansas. So, but I would say whatever they decide, if it's Kansas, Texas, wherever it is, make that the last one that you reconfigure to a fast track, because I think we already have enough.
Yeah, I don't think this was on NASCAR's side that they were going to pick a track to do it at. I think, like you said, if Kansas is in need of the repave, so while they're repaving, Texas was redone not too long ago, and I know they did some things. They went with that progressive banking, I think, is what they went with there, which did generate a little bit of improvement, from my opinion, but maybe not as much as what they had hoped. And that too was a thing that went through. It was, everybody's going to do that, go through the progressive banking. That seemed to be a phase anyway that a couple of tracks went to, and it certainly does help. And like I said, Kansas, if they're in need of the repave, and I want to come back to that of Atlanta, but Kansas, I believe, is in need of a repave within a year or so. So that's why it was a discussion item of when they do, what do we do? Can we do something like Atlanta did? You mentioned the drivers preferring the old track, and that was very specific when it came to Atlanta. That was one of those. I saw an article, and Chase Elliott talked about it. He said, as a driver, yes, you preferred that. I know the drivers wanted and actually kept Atlanta from repaving it for many, many years, but that became a one or two drivers could figure out how to handle it and master it, Kevin Harvick being one of them. Then it became less interesting for the fans. And once they redid it and reconfigured it and made it this super speedway style racing, the fans became more interested and involved, and they've been filling the stands. I don't know if they've been sellouts, but the fan interest is back. And Chase Elliott said, being that he lives in the Atlanta area, he hears that and is around it, and there is just so much more involvement from the fans and the community around Atlanta Motor Speedway again. So that is something we got to be careful of. It may not always be what the drivers want, because this is a fan-orientated and driven sport. However, I'm also not a fan of the fans screaming this and expecting it the next day, or exactly what they want. Because NASCAR, they got to make good business decisions too. Of can't knock the track down and rebuild it next week because you didn't like what you got, type deal either.
Exactly. Okay, do you have another one on your list, Jay?
Yeah, there were a couple more. Let's see. This was an interesting one. There were two. I don't want to get myself in trouble here, but Corey Heim announced that going to have a developmental deal with 2311 that includes both the Cup Series and then some in the Xfinity Series as well, if I'm not mistaken. And being on here, I can't pull the article up right now to have the full schedule of what he's going to do, but it's in partnership with 2311. I believe it's the number 67 that it's going to be on the Cup Series, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know about it on the Xfinity. I just find this ironic, and this is where I said it might get me in a little bit of trouble, but that 2311 is claiming NASCAR doesn't pay them enough and they need more money, but yet they expanded to 3 teams and are starting a 4th part-time and moving into the Xfinity Series. Seems to me like they got some money.
Yeah, they've got plenty of money, let me tell you. We said that when that whole conversation first came up. But anyway, I digress. Corey Hyman, the developmental deal, that's what you're talking about, right?
Right, right.
Okay, Corey Hyman signed to a multi-year deal. Let's see, we'll also race multiple events throughout the season in the Cup Series and the Xfinity Series, as well as his full time in the Cup Series. So, was that the question you were asking, Jay?
Yeah, just what your thoughts were on it. Like I said, I kind of gave mine, and that lended more towards the lawsuit issue. But go ahead.
Okay, so is the subject, let me just be clear, are we talking about the lawsuit or Corey Haim as the developmental driver?
No, it is about Corey Hyman, the developmental deal.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Yeah, Corey Haim, I think, kind of lost out last year. He had nowhere to go, if you will, and he stayed in the Truck Series, which I honestly, I don't think that was a bad thing. I think Corey Haim's going to be a strong contender in the Cup Series this year. And it goes back to what we talked about with who was the driver? Riley Herbst, who spent a second year in the Xfinity Series, and how that kind of is helping him make that transition into the Cup Series this year. We'll see how it progresses throughout the season, but I think that's the same thing that's true for Corey Haim. He's a very talented driver. They recognize his talent, so they've signed him on as a development driver. They're going to not sponsor him, but support him in getting some Xfinity Series experience and Cup Series experience this year. And I know this is something that Sal mentioned in the Cup review that we're going to put up here shortly as well, that Corey Haim is definitely a very talented driver, and they are not going to let that go to waste, if you will, and they're going to snag onto something that is a really good bang for their buck, if you will, in Corey Haim. I think he's got a short learning curve, and he's proven that he's going to do well in the Cup Truck Series this year, and I can't wait to see how he does as the development driver with 2311 as he races in some of these Xfinity Series races and the Cup races. I think he's going to be on a faster learning curve than maybe some of the other drivers, but I do think the extra year in truck is going to serve him well as he progresses. As it relates to the lawsuit, you're right. I agree with you with your comments there. 23 says that they're not being a part of the charter was going to hurt them financially. I don't see it, but go ahead. Your turn.
Well, and there's another sidetrack to it. First, I want to start with I am happy for Corey Haim. I think he deserves to be in either the Xfinity or the Cup, and he's going to get to sample both. We'll see how he does in those races. And I think he's done. I know he hasn't won the championship, but done everything in the Truck Series but win the championship. I know they show stats on how many wins he's got and how quick a time. And I mean, he's just breaking records left and right when it comes to that. So, it's time for him to step forward. I know you mentioned last year of not having a ride to move to, so staying in the Truck Series. There was an option, and it went to Taylor Gray, which Ty Gibbs kind of had a tie to. And I know we said there was maybe some question of if Corey Haim and Ty Gibbs had an issue, that's why he didn't go into that ride and Taylor Gray did. I certainly did expect him to go into the Xfinity Series this year versus returning to the truck. Didn't happen. I don't think it'll hurt him from any aspect. And we saw he's got a win. I know it was via a second place finish and a DQ of first. But I guarantee you, with almost 100% certainty, he wins another race throughout this year and is a contender for the championship. So I think it is time for him to move on next year, be full-time either in the Xfinity Series or the Cup Series. I think this is kind of a pacifying move. This is my opinion, a pacifying move on Toyota. As you said, that you don't want to lose that talent. We've seen Toyota have so many talented drivers in the Truck Series and then in the Xfinity, and not enough room at the Cup level, and they're
Yes.
losing some of these drivers, as we've seen in the past. So there's been a couple that, I was kind of surprised to see leave Toyota, but they want to progress and move forward, so they took that step. I think this is one they're doing the right thing of, you don't want to lose him.
I agree. Corey is a highly talented individual, and I remember one of the race announcers, I think it was Kevin Harvick this past weekend, said he races way beyond his years, and I agree with that. He is very young, but he has that mental fortitude that we were talking about, the mental part of racing, and that is part of racing. Corey Heim has that. And I think that it will serve him well on this learning curve as he progresses through his career here.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And I don't know which races, how they're selecting them. And unfortunately, going back to the Taylor Gray thing, I think that might have been a little bit of a sponsorship type deal too. It's so unfortunate that is part of it, of the driver skill alone maybe isn't what's getting you moved forward. Unfortunately, but that is where NASCAR's at right now. All the teams, we've seen that at the top level of Kyle Busch, so everybody's got to deal with it. But I do still see a very bright future for Corey Heim. I mean, he's one of those, I would go on record now saying he's going to win Cup races at some point down the line.
Okay, Jay, we've been on just a little bit more than an hour. Do you have another 20 minutes in you or not?
Well, no, I was kind of watching that too. And I know we want to try and keep them a little bit shorter. So what I was thinking was throw a couple things out that we'll hit next week. So if you're watching this on replay or throughout the week, be ready for the topics next week. I know you mentioned it earlier in one of the preview shows. There's a rumor. It appears to be gaining strength of the Truck Series having another manufacturer, and it being Dodge. So I think we'll talk about that. And then the other one, and we'll see how this develops, is Hendrick Motorsports. They have a developmental driver and team, and it's Corey Day. I heard some chatter on SiriusXM about that today as to why another driver wasn't chosen for that. And I got some thoughts on that. Would you like to know them? Tune in next week.
There you go. Okay, and I'm just going to throw out, we didn't really get a chance to talk about the penalty for Chase Briscoe's crew chief and some of that went on at Daytona as well. And if you want to know, we did kind of touch on it a little bit, but I think we needed to come up in hot topics where we can kind of elaborate.
And with that, of maybe my next Monday, would the appeal have happened? Because that one was, they appealed, and I don't think that the appeal hasn't been heard. I don't even know if it's been scheduled yet, actually.
I don't think they have scheduled it, but we'll have to wait and see what comes up there. But it should be sometime this week. And you're right, by next Monday night, we'll have probably a decision on that appeal because Joe Gibbs Racing did appeal it. And so we can discuss that as well. So if you want to know our thoughts and what happens with the appeal, we'll talk about that on next Monday night as well.
And the other thing, when it comes to thoughts, we want to hear your thoughts. And I see Sharon has that up there now on the banner of going to try and do the live hot topics every Monday night. If you got comments, put them on there. We can go back and see them even after we post the video. Let me rephrase that. After Sharon does the marvelous job she's doing, I got nothing to do with it other than I call in and share my thoughts. Sharon, you're doing a wonderful job here with this. I know we're learning the YouTube thing, and it's putting a lot of extra on you, but you're doing a great job with that. So, but we would be able to comment once Sharon posts them.
Yeah, what he's talking about is I go through and edit the videos and get them posted up on our YouTube channel. So sometimes that's a process because in addition to posting it up on YouTube, I want to get it up on our Fan4Racing website as well. And I would encourage you to check out our website at fan4racing.com. We always have the recaps up after the races, and all of our radio shows are going up there as well. I didn't get a chance this time. I'm going to have to schedule this ahead of time so that I can put it up at fan4racing.com. It's not there this time. It's going to be up as a replay this time. But next week, we will have it up at fan4racing.com. So if you can't find us on YouTube, go to fan4racing.com and you can watch us there as we stream live for our Hot Topic Sound Off segment. And again, we are looking for folks to join us. If you have an interest in doing that, let me know. Again, we want to make sure we're getting the right individuals to join us in these situations. So there'll be kind of an interview process, if you will, before we bring you in. And but we are looking for people, and we're looking for fans. We're looking for people in the industry. We're looking for all kinds of different individuals to, past Fan4Racing crew members. We're looking for different people to be on the show. We want no more than it's going to be a 3-person kind of thing. It'll be me, Jay, and one other person that we bring into the queue with us to discuss the hot topics. But yeah, if you have an interest in that, let us know, and we'll see what we can do. No promises.
I'm gonna go ahead. Sorry, finish that.
No, I was just saying no promises. Just because you express an interest doesn't mean that you're going to be in here. It depends on how many people we have, and kind of going through a process to see what works and what doesn't work. We want to make sure we bring the right individuals in.
I was just going to say, I'll show you an example of what a great job Sharon's doing. As I tell you to like and subscribe, she'll put up a little banner I know she's got there. I saw the check out the website. So there's the like and subscribe to Fan4Racing Radio. And as always, we like to say thank you. So if she's got that one ready, there it is.
And I got something else here, but it's in a different place, so it'll take me a minute.
It makes me want a disco. That's why I said it reminds me of disco, the disco lights.
There you go. Thanks for watching. We really appreciate everybody taking the time to hear what we have to say. We have fun doing this. We hope you enjoy it. I know we didn't have very many people in the audience today, so most of our viewers are probably going to be people who are tuning in for the replay, and that's fine. We really didn't get a chance to promo this. This is really the first time that we're doing it. Next week, we'll have a chance to have it up in plenty of time. It'll be under the live tab, and we'll let you know that it's coming. And I'll try to get up there a day or two ahead of time. Matter of fact, I could probably post it even tonight to let you know that next Monday night. Does 9:30 work for you, Jay?
Well, I know most weeks, yeah. I know tonight it was kind of a wait and see. I know you did the Cup review with Sal. We'll talk about that.
9 o'clock probably.
Yeah, as long as you guys are done, I'm flexible with that. I know we want to with this one a live broadcast. Obviously, we can get a locked in time, so we'll figure that out and try and get stabilized. Again, this was our first one doing the live video. All the other ones we've done whenever Sharon and I can hook up and record it, and then she does the editing and posting. And like I said, I just show up and talk, and then she does all the rest. But
well,
we'll try and get that situated.
So I appreciate you being here, and you've been so supportive. I know Sal couldn't be on at the beginning of the season for various reasons, and as always, you've been very willing to jump in and back it up and be here in support in both the reviews and the previews. And I really appreciate that as well, Jay. So thank you so much.
Well, as you learned, and my name says the big mouth of the Mid-South, when you interviewed me, you found out I like to talk and I like racing. So, yeah, it worked.
Yeah, it's worked out. What, since 2000? When did you come?
Well, figures, I think it was 19 or 20, because it's been 4 or 5 years. I'm trying to think. Could have been as far as 18, because that was when I got out of the military.
Yeah, it might have been around 18. You were just getting out of the military.
Yep, that was 2018.
And Sal and I have been doing this since 2011. We actually started just to kind of get our feet wet and acclimated a little bit in November of 2011. And then we were all set and ready to go when the 2012 season started. That was our first full season. And so we've been doing this for quite a while.
You know, and that's one we might try and reach out to. I know he was one that's crossed paths with you before, and I knew you and Sal went way back. But I'll have to holler at, or if you reach out to him, the dirtiest voice in the South, the caution flag, Chris Crichton, your announcer at Why Not Motorsports Park. I know he's come on a couple times before.
Yes, he has. He used to be known as the caution flag, if I remember right.
That's why I said I think he still goes by that moniker.
Caution flag, yeah. Chris used to come on the show with us. He'd just show up and we'd bring him into the queue and he'd be part of the conversation. So, I was going to say, send me something on the post or, let me know that you have an interest and we'll work something out. Okay. So, I've had a lot of fun tonight, Jay. I think we had a lot of good hot topics. Next week we'll have more. We've given you a preview, a few of them. And again, thank you everybody for showing up tonight and on the replay, especially because again, there wasn't a lot of pre-warning that we were going to be doing this. So next week, you've got a whole week's notice that we're going to be back doing this again. And if you are watching on the replay, let me just put that up again. Since you couldn't reply or give us a response during the live stream, you can still give us a response or your thoughts in the comments section on the replay. So do that on the replay. Jay and I will monitor that and respond. And we really look forward to hearing what you have to say. We really want this to be interactive. So help us out and interact with us here at Fan4Racing Radio. And we know we're on a slow start. Actually, I'm kind of pleased with the response that we've had already. But this is the first live stream we've had. So as we get this to be a regular Monday night thing and get better at this, we hope more people will hop on and participate with us. So thank you for that in advance.
All right. And we'll talk to you, I guess, probably Friday. I know Wednesday. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do the previews Wednesdays this Wednesday. I know you got things and we got a truck scheduled. So I'll do the one or whichever one you leave for Friday.
Oh, okay. We'll do it on Friday then. And that'll be the preview for both the Xfinity Series as well as the Cup Series for Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. It's a great track, and I can't wait to be able to go to one of the races there.
All right. Looking forward to it. Thanks, Sharon.
Take care, everybody. We'll see you on the other side.